Now, last week we learned that a Year 7 Jewish boy in Victoria was made to kiss the shoes of a Muslim boy in a park under threat of being bashed by several other boys. Now, this image was then spread on social media just to humiliate him further. The boy's mother was unhappy with the school not punishing those responsible, and the state government's now ordered an inquiry. Now police confirm they are also investigating these texts to the Jewish victim from another Muslim boy, threats to slaughter him, suggestions that he think about suicide. Caroline, I guess we should declare that, you're Jewish yourself, but does any of this surprise you?
Look, tragically, Andrew, it doesn't, because sadly, anti-Semitism is on the rise, both in Australia and around the world. We're seeing the mass exodus of Jews from countries in Europe at the moment, and we're seeing it reflected here as well. I mean, obviously, we had the synagogue shooting last night in Germany as well on the holiest day of the Jewish year, but back home we're seeing it in this horrible type of bullying of this poor boy, and also a 5-year-old boy in Melbourne, Jewish boy in Melbourne, who was being bullied for being circumcised. I mean, it is disgusting. It disgusts me that the school said that they couldn't do anything about it, which is why, because it happened outside of school grounds, even though it was their own students who were responsible for this, and the mother had to end up pulling this poor boy out of the school. And apparently, according to some Jewish community leaders, there has been a big trend in parents pulling their Jewish kids out of public schools and having to put them into Jewish schools just because the bullying has been so bad. So sadly, no, it doesn't surprise me, but I think it's abhorrent.
Well, it really, if the school's behaviour, as reported, right, so I don't know, but as reported, appalls me as well. Corey, what's interesting to me is the reaction of Australia's National Imams Council to the way that the Age newspaper of all papers, because it's being of the left, reported on that first photograph I showed you, the kissing one. It mentioned that the bully was Muslim, and it said, the Imams Council, we believe that article to be a prejudicial characterisation of the incident in terms of the faith of only one student, which appears to be a case of gratuitous referencing. And the Imams Council said, this is the effect of engendering division, tension and conflict between communities rather than fairly report on a matter. Now, Corey, should we, in fact, report that the bullies in this case were Muslim?
Of course they should. And I'll tell you why, Andrew, because the mosques, the imams, Islam itself has a history of persecuting the Jews. You can go to the Palestinian Media Authority and they refer to the Jews in the most unsavoury terms. They are indoctrinating and brainwashing young kids into hating Jewish people, the entire Jewish people. And I'm not going to be too tough on these kids here, because kids do nasty things to each other, and it's not just one side that does it to another. It's not just black kids or white kids or Muslim kids or Jewish kids or anyone else, right? They do nasty things, but they learn these things from parents and people in positions of authority. And what appalls me about this, the imams don't condemn it and defend the right of a Jewish kid in the school. The school does nothing, wants to do the Pontius Pilate and wash its hands of it all and say it's got nothing to do with us. And where are these kids learning this hatred? They're learning it online. It's been sponsored by people in positions of authority and religious authority, and you don't have to travel to too many mosques to hear this sort of nonsense going on, and that's why I'm not surprised to see it growing.
Well, I actually want to defend the Imams Council to some extent. They did condemn the kissing incident, but they just said don't mention the boy's Muslim because it tars a whole community with the actions of people that don't represent us, and, that's appalling. They're bad apples. And, I would assume that the vast majority of Muslims in this country would also be appalled by this incident. But, Caroline, what do you think? Report that the boys were Muslim, because I think that gives important context of the kind that Corey's referring to, or not?
Well, I think it's important, and I would be surprised if it wasn't an element of the bullying, given that 2 of the offenders were Muslim against this poor victim. But, look, I think it's incredible how the Imams Council has managed to reframe the whole situation to somehow make the Muslim bullies the victims in this situation, when clearly they're not. They're responsible for the horrendous bullying against this poor child. But the other thing is, as journalists, it's not up to us to self-censor when we are aware of facts. And if the fact is relevant, as the faiths of both the victim and the offender probably are in this case, given the context, as Corey pointed out, then it is not our job to self-censor just because it might cause offence or some problems in the community. We should be honest with our readers and viewers.
Particularly when it does go to giving a historical context. Sorry, Corey, I cut you off.
I was just going to say, do you think if the victim was a Muslim boy and it was a white supremacist or a Jew doing it, do you think the Imams Council will be complaining then? I mean, this contextualises the story and it plays into the case of how is this poison being treated and put out there.
I think that's right, Corey. But Corey, to another example of bullying, but in a geopolitical scale,